Welcome back with Stephen Williams of Southern Technical College. We are on Chapter 7, Part 3, talking about timing relays.
Hey y'all. Okay, timing relays. So what are they? They're timers. There's two basic different types that they use in most of the motor control circuits that I'm familiar with. One would be a on delay and one's going to be an off delay. And we're going to get into them now. What you're seeing here is what they're calling an on delay timer. All right, so as if you can look at the chart here, at this point in time, neither is energized. So once we energize the coil, in this case, we're turning it on. Okay, the time delay starts, and after a period of, in this case, 5 seconds, the time delay will trigger the change of state of the contacts. Okay, you have, for example, I want to turn a motor on and 5 seconds later I want to turn a valve on. Okay, so that would be the way you'd use it with that type of a timer. The other type of timer is an off delay. An off delay just does just the opposite. The delay is when you turn the timer off, okay? And you also have the opportunity to have both delay contacts and instantaneous contacts on the same relay. So what we're dealing with is there's a number of different methods for doing the delaying. Okay, so there's as many types of timers as you can think of. Timers are magnitude of operations, start and stop at different time intervals. And we have what's called a motor operated timer, okay, where there's a small motor that actually drives it. And you can cycle it, it can do a multitude of steps. For example, it can do you can program it any way you want. Think of it as like a wind-up music box, where you've got different tones that are coming out of the music box based upon what it's programmed to do. The little niches that they put in there, the little dings that they put in there. Well, same idea. As it's timing out, you can have a 5-second delay of something going on, and then a 10-second delay of that thing going off, and then another on cycle and another off cycle. You can do pretty much whatever you want with that motor operated timer. Okay, and they're not frequently used. I don't, unless you're getting into a conveyor system where you want to be able to do things at certain periods of time. In other words, you get so many items together and then you want to gather them, and so you want to stop the belt for a second or whatever. I don't know. You can dream up a number of different ideas. Anyhow, but you've also got basically clocks. For example, you can have and especially with solid state timers, okay? Like I've got one that we bought it for the lab, a couple of them. I got an on delay and an off delay that are programmable to, that delay can only be set up for one time, but that's the type of relay I bought. I can set that time for between 1 second and 3 days. Okay? So I've got a pretty good range of time there. I also have a second dial on the same relay where I can set it from 0, or I should say from like 10% up to 100%. So I can pick like a time delay of 1 hour okay, and then take 10% of 1 hour to be 6 minutes. Or I can take it to set it for a second and then take 50% of it to be a half a second. So they're, and it's, again, because it's electronic, it's so easy to do, okay, because it's all solid state. Keeping time on things is extremely easy with solid state. All right, and we started to mention, okay, a timer is supplied with continuous power. Obviously, if you're not powering it, it's not going to be working. Okay, now a dashpot timer, I've seen them either with air, like a pneumatic relay, or I've seen them with oil, and quite frankly, they're not terribly accurate, but they work, and they're fairly repetitive. Essentially what happens is think of a dashpot as something like a container that maybe is filled with air, or filled with water, or filled with oil, and you trigger the relay, and it's not going to operate until you empty the little container of air, or empty it. In other words, it's spring loaded, it's working against the spring, it's closing it, and once it gets to a certain point, boom, it trips, and then go. They're fairly good as far as repeatability. They're very poor as far as accuracy is concerned. They're very tough to set up. Okay, so it takes a long time to get them calibrated properly, but besides that, they're there. And then the electronic timer, like I say, is so infinitely easier. Okay, and you've got the other types besides the dashpots. They're limited as far as their range. For example, you might see one that's good for between 1 and 30 seconds. You might see another one between 1 and 60 seconds. You might have another one that's good for between 10 minutes and an hour. Okay, but again, repeatability on that might be, or I should say, the accuracy could be anywhere from about 2% to maybe 5%, where with an electronic timer you can get damn good accuracy, less than 1% accuracy, which is very, very good. In other words, when you're talking accuracy, you're looking at, you have a set point, it's coming to within 1% of that set point versus 5% of that set point. That's a big difference. Okay, so, and again, a lot of times the dashpots have some kind of container with an orifice in it. Sometimes you vary that size of the orifice in order to change the timing on it. Pneumatic timers have a relatively small adjustable setting. Here it's going from 5 hundredths of a second up to a total of 180 seconds with plus or minus 10% accuracy. So, not terribly accurate. All right, instantaneous contacts, as they say, they will change instantaneous. Okay, so when the coil picks up, telling the relay to work, it also changes those instantaneous things. Like say you want to do something besides the delay action. You want to do something immediately and then have the delay action happen after the timing takes place. And then you've got the time contacts, and like I say, they could be on time where the delay happens after it's energized, or an off delay, which means that after it's de-energized, it gets a delay. Okay, so that's about it for, you can they get into different types here. The solid states, again, circuitry, timing function, the RC circuits. Again, you can get very, very accurate with these things. Electronic bake timers are more accurate than the dashpot counterparts and can control timing functions a fraction of a second. Okay, to hours, and like I say, I've got one that we bought for the shop that is days. Okay, it can go up to 3 days and break it down to as low as a half a second. All right, so in order to maintain the timing operation, solid-state timers are normally required to be energized at all times. Okay, they're energized, but they're not necessarily picked up. They have that signal that goes in there and tells it to start timing. Normally open, time closed, normally closed, time open. A lot of different timing is available, and again, as we get into the timing functions, there is you can see that there's a lot of things you can do with them, and they also have different kind of timers where you can set it to start and stop. We'll get there. So moving off, time delay. Okay, we talked about that. Normally open, time off. Okay. Cancel. And as we go along, you can have timers, for example, turn a sump pump off and on, or to cycle. Let's suppose you've got 2 sump pumps and you want to keep them available. You can have an alternator that'll alternate them between different ones. There's a lot of different kinds of things that you can do. One-shot timers, never ran into them. I think, quite frankly, I don't know how useful they are. I've never run into them. I'm not going to go into them because from my perspective, I don't know that they're going to do us much good, and I am not going to be testing you on them. All right, they're giving you a bunch of little things in here.
But a
This was
one-shot
posted-
timer just means it's a timer for just one time period, not repeating, right?
Yeah, pretty
Kinda.
much, yeah.
Yeah.
But it gets a little complicated when you get into it a little more. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say as far as timers are concerned. The next thing we're going to get into is the next section is part 4, and that's going to deal with latching relays. They're a little bit different, but not so different than other things you got there.
All right, y'all. We'll join you next time.